He appeared in my garden at dawn, kneeling beside my tomato plants like he'd been waiting there all night. An alien, on Earth, in my backyard. And when I asked him why he was here, he said 5 words that changed everything. I knew him. Before Bethlehem. For 3 mornings he came back, sharing prophecies about Jesus that were never written in any Bible, never spoken in any church. Prophecies about what Jesus said in the silence between the miracles. Before I tell you what this being revealed, hit that subscribe button. Because these prophecies, these hidden truths about Christ, will challenge everything your pastor never told you. My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm 72 years old. I've been a widow for 8 years, a Christian for 64 years, and a gardener for as long as I can remember. My small house in rural Vermont sits on 2 acres, most of it dedicated to the vegetable garden that keeps me sane and connected to God's creation. I wake up early. Always have. 5 a.m. every morning, even in retirement. That Tuesday in June started like any other. Coffee brewing. Dawn just beginning to paint the sky pink. My gardening gloves already on as I stepped out the back door into the cool morning air. That's when I saw him. At first I thought it was a person, someone crouched between my tomato plants, examining them closely. My heart jumped. An intruder. At my age, alone on a rural property. That's terrifying. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. "You're on private property." The figure stood up slowly, turning to face me. And I realized immediately that this was no person. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, but with proportions that were somehow wrong. Too thin. Limbs too long. He wore what looked like a simple gray garment, almost like a monk's robe. But the fabric seemed to move on its own, shifting and flowing like water. His face was the most shocking part. Humanoid, yes, but not human. Large eyes, bigger than ours, a golden amber color that seemed to glow in the dawn light. Skin that was pale but with an undertone of blue, like porcelain. No hair. Features that were somehow both beautiful and unsettling. I should have screamed, should have run inside and called 911, but I didn't. Because when his eyes met mine, I felt something I hadn't felt since my husband died. Peace. "Forgive the intrusion, Margaret Chen," he said. His voice was melodic, accented in a way I couldn't place, like he'd learned English from many different regions at once. "I have been waiting for you." "How do you know my name?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I have known you for quite some time. I have watched you tend this garden, watched you pray over these plants, watched you grieve and slowly heal. You've been watching me?" That should have been creepy, but somehow it wasn't. "Watching over you," he corrected gently. "There is a difference." I looked at him standing there among my tomatoes, the rising sun creating a halo effect around his strange form. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was impossible. Aliens weren't real. And if they were, they didn't appear in Vermont vegetable gardens at dawn. But faith has taught me that impossible doesn't mean untrue. "Who are you?" I asked. "I am called Azariel. I am a witness. One of many who have observed your world since before humans looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond." "A witness to what?" "To everything. To your history. To your prophets. To your saviors." He paused, and something that looked like sadness crossed his alien features. "To the one you call Jesus Christ." I knew him, Margaret, before Bethlehem, during his time on earth, and after his departure. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the porch steps. You knew Jesus? I witnessed his entire mission, and I have returned to share prophecies he spoke that were never recorded. Words meant for the end times. Words meant for now. He took a step closer, and I saw tears, actual tears, forming in those golden eyes. If you will listen, Margaret Chen, I will tell you what no human ear has ever heard. The hidden prophecies of Jesus Christ. I brought him tea. I don't know why that was my instinct, to bring tea to an alien in my garden, but 72 years of hosting church ladies dies hard. He accepted the mug with a slight bow of his head, his long fingers wrapping around the ceramic in an almost human gesture. We sat on my back porch, the morning sun warming us, my garden spread out before us like a congregation. Why me? I finally asked. Why tell me these prophecies? I'm nobody, just an old widow in Vermont. Azariel, the name still felt strange on my tongue, took a sip of tea and seemed to genuinely enjoy it. You are far from nobody, Margaret Chen. You have suffered loss without losing faith. You have questioned without abandoning hope. You tend life in this garden while preparing for your own death with grace. These qualities are rare, sacred. That doesn't answer why you'd choose me to hear secret prophecies. Because secret prophecies are not meant for the powerful or the famous. They are meant for those who will listen with humility and share with wisdom. His golden eyes met mine. And because your time here grows short, you will not live to see the return, but you can prepare others who will. The bluntness about my mortality should have stung, but at 72 with a heart condition, I'd made my peace with the inevitable. How long have I got? I asked. That is not for me to say. But your autumn will not see spring. 6 months, maybe less. The doctors had said similar things more diplomatically. Then you'd better start talking, I said. I don't have time to waste. Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. The first prophecy Jesus spoke was given 3 days after his baptism, when he was alone in the wilderness. Before the temptations you read about in the Gospels, before the devil came, there was another visitor first. You? One like me. We take turns, you see, watching, guiding when permitted. Jesus had just heard the voice of his Father confirming his identity. This is my beloved Son. But he was still fully human, still wrestling with what that meant. Azariel set down his tea and leaned forward, and suddenly his voice changed, became deeper, more resonant, as if speaking words that carried weight beyond normal speech. The witness came to him and said, "The path before you will break you." And Jesus replied, "I know." The witness said, "Your own people will reject you." Jesus said, "I know." The witness said, "Even those you love most will abandon you when fear comes." Jesus said, "I know." And finally, the witness asked, "Then why walk this path?" Azariel paused, and I realized I was holding my breath. Jesus stood up, looked out at the desert stretching endlessly before him, and spoke the first hidden prophecy. Because in the far future, when the darkness grows thick and hope seems lost, they will need to know that someone walked the hardest path first, that someone chose love even when hate was easier, that someone endured the breaking so they would know they could endure it too. I am not dying for their sins. I am dying so they remember how to live. Tears ran down my face. This wasn't in any gospel I'd ever read. That's not in the Bible, I whispered. No, Azariel said gently. That prophecy was hidden until now, until the darkness he spoke of has come. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Birds sang in my garden. A breeze moved through the tomato plants. The normal world continuing while my understanding of everything shifted beneath me. Why would God hide prophecies? I finally asked. If Jesus said these things, why wouldn't they be in the Bible? Azariel turned his golden eyes to the sky, as if gathering his thoughts from the clouds. The Bible you have is incomplete. Not through malice, at least not entirely, but through human limitation. The early church fathers had to choose which teachings to preserve and which to set aside. They chose what they believed humanity could understand at that time. What wouldn't cause more chaos than clarity? And these prophecies would have caused chaos? Yes, because they speak of things humans were not ready to hear, of a universe more vast and populated than they could conceive, of a God whose love extends beyond one planet, one species, of a Jesus whose mission was simultaneously more specific and more universal than the church wanted to admit. I poured myself more tea with shaking hands. Are you saying the church deliberately hid teachings of Jesus? I am saying humans always reshape divine truth to fit their understanding and their needs. Sometimes wisdom, sometimes fear, sometimes power. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD decided what was orthodox and what was heresy. Many true teachings were labeled heretical because they threatened the power structure being built. And you were there? You witnessed this? Not I personally, but my predecessor. We have always been here, Margaret, watching, recording, preserving what humanity loses or destroys. We are the backup plan, you might say, the eternal witnesses who remember when humans forget. I thought about that, about beings from beyond our world watching our history, keeping records of what we'd lost. How many prophecies are there? I asked. How many hidden teachings? Jesus spoke often of the end times, as you know, but he also spoke specifically about this time, about the convergence, about the moment when humanity would stand on the brink of either transformation or destruction. He left instructions, warnings, promises, 7 major prophecies that were never written down, 7 keys to surviving what comes next. And you're going to tell me all of them? Over the next 3 mornings, yes. Today, tomorrow, and the day after. Then I must leave. These encounters take tremendous energy, and prolonged exposure to our presence can be harmful to humans your age. Why only 3 days? Why not tell me everything at once? Azariel stood, his tall form casting a long shadow across my garden. Because revelation cannot be rushed. Your mind, your heart, your soul need time to integrate each prophecy before receiving the next. And because... He paused, and that sadness crossed his features again. Because I can only hold physical form in your dimension for limited time. 3 dawns. Then I must return to my own plane of existence. He walked to the edge of my porch, preparing to leave. Wait, I called. Will you tell me the second prophecy tomorrow? Yes. But tonight, Margaret Chen, you must pray. You must ask your God if you have the strength to carry these words, because once you know them, you cannot unknow them, and you will be compelled to share them no matter the cost. He faded then, not walking away, but simply becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone. Leaving me alone with my shattered coffee mug and my racing thoughts, and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same. I barely slept that night. I prayed until my knees ached, then prayed some more sitting in my armchair, then lying in bed staring at the ceiling. Was this real? Was I losing my mind? At 72, with a heart condition and too many medications, was I hallucinating alien visitors who claimed to know Jesus? But when dawn came, and I walked into my garden, he was there again. Azariel sat cross-legged between my bean plants, his gray robes pooled around him, his golden eyes watching the sunrise with what looked like reverence. "You came back," I said, relief flooding through me. "Did you doubt I would?" "I doubted my sanity all night." He nodded slowly. "That is good. Doubt means you are thinking critically. Faith without questions is not faith. It is merely obedience." I sat down beside him on the damp grass, not caring about my gardening pants getting wet. "Did you pray?" he asked. "All night. And what did your God tell you?" I was quiet for a moment, remembering the feeling that had finally come in the pre-dawn hours. Not a voice, not a vision, just a deep certainty settling into my bones. He told me to listen, to trust, to carry the words even if they're heavy. Azariel placed his long hand gently on my shoulder. The touch was cool but not unpleasant. "Then you are ready for the second prophecy. This one Jesus spoke on the night before he was betrayed, after the Last Supper, after Judas had left, but before they went to Gethsemane. There was a moment, maybe an hour, when he was alone with the 11 who remained." "The Bible doesn't mention that," I said. "The Bible mentions many nights Jesus spent in prayer alone. Not all alone times are recorded. In this time, Peter asked him a question. 'Master, if you know you will be betrayed, arrested, killed, why not flee? Why not let us protect you?'" Azariel's voice changed again, taking on that resonant quality that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "And Jesus said to them, 'Where would I flee to? Beyond this world? Beyond this pain? I came here knowing the end from the beginning. But hear me, my friends. I tell you a mystery. The suffering you will witness is not punishment from the Father. It is not sacrifice to appease an angry God. It is demonstration." "Demonstration of what?" they asked. "That love is stronger than death. That truth is stronger than power. That light survives even when darkness seems to win. In ages to come, when evil appears triumphant, when hope seems foolish, when the righteous suffer, they will remember that God Himself walked this path first, and they will know it is possible to walk it too." "But Master," John said, "what if they forget? What if future generations don't understand?" And Jesus looked at them with tears in His eyes and spoke the second prophecy. "Then the witnesses will remind them. When the time is darkest, when the church has lost its way, when my words have been twisted into weapons, the witnesses will return. They will tell the forgotten truths. They will shake the foundation of false certainty, and many will call them demons, but they will be angels of remembering." I stared at Azariel, my heart pounding. "You're the witnesses," I whispered. "You're the angels of remembering." "We are," he confirmed, "and the time of darkest is now." "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "If you're angels, why do you look like aliens?" Why not appear as humans, or with wings and halos like we expect? Azariel made a sound that might have been a laugh. Angels are not what you imagine, Margaret. The word means messenger. We are messengers. But we are also simply ourselves, beings from another part of God's creation, assigned to watch and occasionally guide yours. The wings and halos are human additions, artistic interpretations of light and energy. We appear as we are. So aliens and angels are the same thing? Not exactly, but also not entirely different. Your language lacks the words for what we truly are. We exist in dimensions your physics is only beginning to understand. We can take physical form, as I do now, but it is not our natural state. When your Bible speaks of angels appearing to shepherds or prophets, it was beings like me, briefly manifesting in your reality. I tried to process this. Everything I'd been taught in Sunday school, in 64 years of church attendance, was being reconstructed before my eyes. The church would call this heresy, I said quietly. Yes, they would, because the church has built its power on the idea that humanity is special, chosen, alone in creation with a God who focuses only on you. But Margaret, how small that makes God. How limited. He gestured to the sky, the dawn now fully broken, pink and gold across the clouds. God is infinite. Creation is infinite. You are not alone in the universe. There are thousands of worlds with thinking beings, hundreds who have been sent teachers like Jesus, dozens who have killed those teachers just as you did, a few who have listened and transcended. The story of Jesus is your particular chapter in a much larger book. Then what makes Jesus special? I asked, feeling tears coming. If he's just one teacher among many. He is special because he came to you, Azariel said fiercely. Because he walked on your earth, spoke your languages, lived your specific human experience. Because his sacrifice was for your salvation specifically. The fact that God loves others too does not diminish how much he loves you. A parent with many children does not love each child less because there are others. I wiped my eyes, nodding slowly. The third prophecy, Azariel continued, his voice growing softer. Jesus spoke it on the cross. Between the recorded words, "Father, forgive them," and "It is finished," there was a moment, a gap in time. In that moment, he spoke words only the witnesses heard. I leaned forward, breath held. He said, "I leave them two gifts. First, the Comforter who will guide them. Second, the witnesses who will remind them when they forget the Comforter's voice. In the end times, they will need both. My church will grow powerful and then corrupt. My name will be used for hate I never taught. My words will be twisted into chains when I meant them as freedom. But when the darkness is complete, the witnesses will come. They will appear strange and frightening. Many will call them demons. But by their message you will know them. For they will speak of love I taught, not rules I never made." I was crying openly now. "The church won't believe this," I sobbed. "They'll say you're Satan." "That I'm deceived." "I know," Azariel said gently. "That is why the prophecies were hidden." Jesus knew they would reject the very help he sent. The second morning ended with Azariel fading away as the sun rose fully above the trees. I spent that day in a daze, mechanically tending my garden, while my mind churned through everything I'd heard. I called my daughter that evening. Susan lived in Boston with her husband and two teenage kids. We talked every week, But I'd never told her about Azariel. How could I? "Mom, you sound strange," she said after a few minutes of small talk. "Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, honey. Just thinking about things, about faith, about what I believe." "Is this about your heart?" "Did the doctor say something?" No. Nothing like that. I'm just processing some things." We talked for another half hour, mostly about her kids and her job. Normal things, safe things. The whole time I wanted to tell her, I've met an angel, an alien, a witness to Christ. He's telling me prophecies the Bible never recorded. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I'd heard all 7. The third morning, I was in my garden before dawn, waiting. Azariel appeared just as the first pink light touched the horizon. "You're eager," he observed. "I'm dying," I said bluntly. "You told me I won't see spring. That means I have maybe 4 or 5 months to share these prophecies before I'm gone. I don't have time to waste." He nodded solemnly. "Today I will share 3 prophecies instead of 1. Time grows short for both of us." We sat together in silence for a few moments, and I realized I'd grown comfortable with him. This impossible being from another world felt more like a friend than a stranger. "The 4th prophecy," Azariel began. "Jesus spoke to Mary Magdalene 3 days after his resurrection. This conversation is not in your Gospels at all." "Why not?" "Because the early church did not want to acknowledge how important Mary was to Jesus. A woman could not be one of his primary disciples in that culture. But she was. She understood him in ways the men did not. What did he tell her? He found her weeping in the garden where he had been buried. He appeared to her first, before the others, because she had not run away. The men fled when he was arrested. Mary stayed. She watched him die. She came to anoint his body. Her love was faithful when theirs faltered. Azariel's voice shifted into that resonant, prophetic tone. Mary said to him, "Master, I thought I had lost you forever." And Jesus replied, "You cannot lose what is eternal. You cannot separate from what is everywhere. I am going to the Father, but I am not leaving you. I am going to prepare a place, yes, but not just in heaven, also in time." "In time, Master?" she asked. "Yes. I am embedding myself in the timeline of your world, becoming part of your history, your future, your present. Every moment from now until the end will carry my presence. In the darkest hours, if you listen carefully, you will hear my voice. If you look carefully, you will see my hand. I am not leaving. I am spreading myself across all time, so I will always be available to be found." The 4th prophecy is this: in the end times, the veil between times will thin. Those who have died in faith will be closer than you think. Heaven and earth will touch, and the reunion you long for with those you've lost will begin before you expect it. I thought of my husband, dead 8 years. God, how I missed him. "When?" I whispered. "When will the reunion begin?" "It already has," Azariel said gently. "You just haven't learned to see it yet." "The 5th prophecy," Azariel continued, not giving me time to fully absorb the 4th, "is the most difficult, the most controversial, the one that will make the church hate you most." "Tell me," I said, steeling myself. After his resurrection, but before his ascension, Jesus spent 40 days appearing to his disciples. The Bible records some of these appearances. But there was one gathering on a mountain in Galilee where he spoke only to the core 12, minus Judas, plus Matthias, who would replace him. What did he say? Peter asked him, "Lord, you have defeated death. You have proven your power. Now will you restore the kingdom to Israel? Will you overthrow Rome? Will you establish your reign on earth?" Azariel's eyes grew sad. And Jesus looked at Peter with such love and such sorrow, and he said, "Peter, Peter, you still do not understand. My kingdom is not of this world, and it never will be. But hear me now, for I tell you a hard truth. In my name kingdoms will be established on earth. Men will claim to speak for me who do not know me. They will build temples of gold while my children starve. They will wage wars in my name who teach peace. They will condemn in my name who taught forgiveness. Then how will we know true teachers from false?" John asked. Jesus replied, "By their fruits, as I have always taught. But I will tell you more specifically. In the end times, false teachers will be easy to identify. They will speak more about who God hates than who God loves. They will accumulate wealth while teaching poverty. They will seek power while I taught service. They will create rules I never made and call them holy. They will divide my children into worthy and unworthy when I declared all worthy. They will quote me selectively, using my words as weapons. They will speak of holiness while living in hypocrisy. They will build megachurches and ignore the homeless at their doors. They will preach family values while tearing families apart. They will claim to follow me while embodying everything I opposed." I felt sick, because I could see it. I'd seen it. Televangelists in mansions, churches turning away the poor, pastors caught in scandals. Faith used to justify hatred. "The fifth prophecy is this," Azariel said, his voice heavy with grief. "My true church in the end times will not be in buildings. It will not have denominations or hierarchies. It will be scattered individuals who love as I loved, serve as I served, forgive as I forgave. They will often be rejected by the organized churches. They will be called heretics for acting like me. But they will be my body on earth, and I will know them, even if religious leaders do not." "So the church is wrong?" I asked, my voice small. "Not wrong. Corrupted. There is a difference. Many good people remain in the church, doing good work. But the institution itself has often lost its way. Jesus prophesied this, warned this, and asked that in the end times someone would remind his people what he actually taught." "And that someone is me?" I asked bitterly. "A 72-year-old woman in Vermont?" "That someone is everyone who hears and shares," Azariel replied, "including you." "The sixth prophecy," Azariel said, his voice growing softer, "is about children. And it may be the most important of all. The sun was fully risen now. My third morning with him. Tomorrow he would be gone. The thought made my chest ache. "Tell me," I said. When Jesus was teaching one day, children kept interrupting, running up to him, pulling on his robes, laughing and playing. The disciples tried to shoo them away, saying, "The Master is teaching important things. This is not time for children." "I know this story," I said. "Jesus said, 'Let the children come to me.'" "Yes, but he said more than what your Bible records." After he rebuked the disciples, he pulled a small girl, maybe 5 years old, onto his lap. She played with his beard while he spoke. The disciples were scandalized. A man alone with a child, not even his own daughter, in full view of everyone. It violated their customs. But Jesus didn't care about customs that harmed, I said. Exactly. And while that little girl sat on his lap, he spoke. Hear me carefully, for I tell you a mystery about children. They are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with knowledge. They are not sinners needing to be corrected. They are not possessions to be controlled. They are whole human beings, carrying the image of God in their purest form. In the end times, children will suffer most. They will be exploited, abused, trafficked, neglected. They will be used as weapons in adult conflicts. Their innocence will be stolen. And those who harm children, whether through violence, neglect, or indoctrination that crushes their spirit, will face judgment more severe than any other sin. I was crying again, thinking of all the children I'd read about in the news. Trafficked, abused by priests, killed in wars, starving while food was thrown away. But he also said this, Azariel continued, his own eyes glistening. The generation that finally chooses peace will be led by children. Not children in age, but children in heart. Those who retained their capacity for wonder, for trust, for play, for forgiveness. Those who never let the world harden them. The meek will inherit the earth, and the meek are those who kept their childlike hearts despite all reasons to become cynical. The sixth prophecy is, in the end times, listen to the children. They will see truth that adults have forgotten. They will speak wisdom that elders ignore. They will lead movements that seem impossible. And those who dismiss them as too young, too naive, too idealistic, those people will miss the coming of the kingdom entirely. For I tell you truly, unless you become like children, you will never enter. So the kingdom comes, through children, I asked. Through those who never stopped being children at heart. Those who can still believe in impossible goodness. Who can still trust despite betrayal. Who can still hope despite evidence. Who can still love despite hurt. That is the childlike heart Jesus spoke of. And in the end times, those hearts will change the world. I thought of my grandchildren, 16 and 14, idealistic, passionate about justice and environment and equality. My generation often dismissed them as naive, but what if they were seeing clearly and we were the blind ones? One more prophecy, Azariel said. The seventh. Tomorrow, our final dawn together. I didn't sleep at all that third night. How could I? Tomorrow would be my last conversation with Azariel, my last chance to ask questions, my last opportunity to learn hidden truths. And after that, I'd have maybe 4 months to share these prophecies before my heart gave out. The weight of it pressed on me like a physical thing. When dawn came, I was already in the garden. Azariel appeared more slowly this time, like it took more effort. His form seemed less solid, slightly translucent. You're fading, I said, alarmed. Yes, I cannot maintain physical form in your dimension much longer. This will be our last meeting, Margaret Chen. Tears streamed down my face. I'm not ready. There's so much more I want to know. You know what you need to know. The 7 prophecies. Now you must decide what to do with them. Tell me the last one, I begged. The 7th prophecy. Azariel sat down beside me one final time. The morning was beautiful. Golden light, birdsong, my garden in full summer glory. A perfect moment for goodbye. The seventh prophecy, he began. Jesus spoke on the Mount of Olives as he was preparing to ascend. The disciples asked him, "When will you return? What will be the sign?" The Bible records his answer about wars and rumors of wars, famines and earthquakes, I said. Yes, but he said more. He said, "When I return, it will not be as you expect. I will not come in clouds of glory to wage war. I will not come to condemn the world. I will come quietly, in the hearts of those who choose love over hate. I will come slowly, in the evolution of consciousness. I will come certainly, in the transformation of your species from violent children to mature beings of compassion. The second coming is not an event. It is a process. It is happening now. It will continue happening. Every act of genuine love is my return. Every moment of true forgiveness is my presence. Every choice of peace over violence is my kingdom coming to earth. In the end times, you will look for me in the sky. You will expect trumpets and angels and judgment. But I will be in the eyes of the stranger you feed. In the hand of the enemy you forgive. In the heart of the child you protect. In the earth you tend and heal. In the silence where you listen for my voice. The seventh prophecy is this: my return will be complete when you finally understand that I never left. When you realize that every human being carries my presence. When you see me in each other, especially those you think least deserve it. When you love as I loved, not because of what people are, but because of what they can become. Then the second coming will be fulfilled. Then heaven and earth will be one. Then my prayer, that you would be one as the Father and I are one, will finally be answered. I sat in stunned silence. It's already happening, I whispered. The second coming. It's not future. It's now. It has always been now, Azariel said gently. You just weren't ready to see it until now. He began to fade, becoming more translucent, harder to see. Wait! I grabbed his hand, feeling it solid one last time. Will I see you again? After I die? He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Margaret Chen, you will see everything, and it will be more wonderful than you can imagine. Then he was gone, and I was alone in my garden with 7 hidden prophecies and perhaps 4 months to share them before joining him in whatever comes next. For 3 days after Azariel left, I did nothing. I tended my garden in a daze. I slept poorly. I prayed constantly. And I wrestled with the question, what do I do now? Who would believe me? A 72-year-old widow claiming an alien angel told her secret prophecies of Jesus. They'd think I was senile, delusional, experiencing dementia or medication side effects. The church would condemn me. My own daughter might have me evaluated for mental competency. But I had promised. Azariel asked if I had the strength to carry these words, and I had said yes. On the 4th day, I called Susan. Honey, I said, my voice trembling, I need to tell you something. And I need you to not interrupt until I'm finished. Mom, you're scaring me. I know, but please, just listen. I told her everything. Azariel, the 3 mornings, the 7 prophecies. I spoke for nearly 2 hours, hardly pausing for breath. Susan was silent the entire time. When I finished, the silence stretched long and terrible. Mom, she finally said, her voice careful. Have you told your doctor about this? My heart sank. You think I'm crazy? I think you're 72 with a heart condition on multiple medications. I think stress and grief can create vivid experiences that feel real. I think maybe we should have you evaluated. I'm not crazy, Susan. I didn't say you were. But Mom, aliens, secret prophecies, this sounds like a breakdown. I know how it sounds, but it happened. Then show me proof. Bring me evidence. Bring me this Azariel. He's gone. He said 3 mornings only. How convenient. The bitterness in her voice cut deep. Susan, please. I don't have much time. The doctors said, I know what the doctors said. And I think maybe your mind is trying to make sense of dying by creating this elaborate spiritual experience. It's okay, Mom. It's normal even. But we need to be realistic about what's happening. We argued for another hour. It ended with both of us in tears and no resolution. That night, I started writing. If my own daughter wouldn't believe me, maybe strangers would. Or maybe no one would. But I had to try. I wrote down all 7 prophecies exactly as Azariel had spoken them. I wrote about our 3 mornings together. I wrote about my doubts, my fears, my certainty that this was real despite how impossible it sounded. When I finished, I had 30 pages. My neighbor's grandson, Tyler, was 17 and good with computers. I asked him to help me create a blog and post my writings there. What's it about, Mrs. Chen? He asked, setting up the website on his laptop at my kitchen table. Prophecies, I said. Hidden teachings of Jesus Christ. Cool. Like a religious blog? Something like that. He helped me publish it, showed me how to share the link. Then, because he was a kind kid, he shared it on his own social media with a note. My neighbor wrote this. Pretty interesting spiritual stuff if you're into that. Within a week, the blog had 500 views. Within a month, 5,000. People started commenting. Some mocked me. Many more said the prophecies resonated with something deep inside them. A few claimed they'd had similar encounters with beings who shared spiritual truths. The local newspaper did a piece. Vermont widow claims alien angel shared secret prophecies of Christ. It was patronizing, slightly mocking, but it spread the word further. Then a Christian podcast reached out. Would I be willing to be interviewed? I said yes. The host was skeptical but fair. He let me speak. He asked thoughtful questions. And at the end, he said something that shocked me. I don't know if I believe your visitor was real, Margaret. But I believe these prophecies are true. They align with the spirit of Christ's teachings, even if they're not in the Bible. And frankly, the church needs to hear them. The podcast episode went viral. Within days, hundreds of thousands of people had listened. My phone rang constantly. Christian blogs wanted interviews. Paranormal investigators wanted to examine my garden. Skeptics wanted to debunk me. Believers wanted to thank me. The local pastor visited me. Pastor Tom, a kind man I'd known for 15 years. Margaret, he said gently, sitting in my living room, the diocese is concerned. These claims you're making, they're causing confusion, division. People are questioning their faith. Maybe they should question, I said. Maybe we all should. The Bible is complete. It contains all we need to know. Adding to it, I'm not adding to it. I'm sharing what was always true but hidden. By an alien, by a witness, an angel, a messenger. He sighed deeply. The church cannot endorse this. I wanted to tell you personally before the official statement comes. You'll be denounced from the pulpit on Sunday. Your membership will be revoked. I'm sorry, but don't be sorry, Tom. Jesus prophesied this too, that the church would reject the very messengers he sent. He left looking troubled. Sunday came. I didn't go to church, but friends told me what happened. Pastor Tom's sermon condemned false prophecies from deceptive spirits. My name wasn't mentioned directly, but everyone knew. Half the congregation stood and walked out in protest. The church split. Some stayed, clinging to tradition. Others left, hungry for the deeper truth the prophecies pointed toward. It was exactly what Azariel said would happen. 3 months after Azariel left, I was dying. My heart was failing faster than expected. The doctors gave me weeks, maybe a month. I spent most days in bed now, my laptop beside me, still responding to messages, still sharing the prophecies with anyone who asked. Susan finally came to visit. She sat beside my bed, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry I didn't believe you. Sorry I wasted time arguing instead of listening. You believed what made sense to you, I said weakly. I don't blame you. But you were right. Or, at least the prophecies were right. I've been reading them, really reading them, and Mom, they've changed me. The way I see people, the way I see faith, everything. That's all I wanted, I whispered. For people to hear, to consider, to let it change them if it rang true. She squeezed my hand. There's something else. The blog. Mom, it's exploded. Over 1 million people have read it now. There are discussion groups forming, churches that are actually discussing the prophecies openly. A publisher wants to print it as a book. A book? They're calling it The Hidden Prophecies, What an Angel Told a Gardener About Jesus. They want to rush it to print before I die, I finished for her. It's okay. You can say it. The advance is substantial, enough to set up a foundation, to spread the message further, to help people who are searching for this deeper truth. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. A foundation, a book, a movement. All from 3 mornings in my garden with an impossible visitor. Do it, I said. All of it. Spread the prophecies as far as they'll go. Over the next weeks, as my body failed, the movement grew. Churches were splitting between traditional interpretation and these new old prophecies. Denominations were fracturing, but something else was happening too. People were changing. I received thousands of messages. People who said the prophecies had freed them from religious guilt. People who said they finally understood Jesus in a way that made sense. People who said they'd left Christianity years ago, but these teachings called them back. Young people especially. The generation my grandchildren belonged to. They embraced these prophecies with a hunger that shocked the older generation. Finally, one teenager wrote, Jesus makes sense. He's not about rules and judgment. He's about love and transformation. That's a Jesus I can follow. The 7th prophecy was manifesting. The childlike hearts were recognizing truth. Even some skeptics admitted the prophecies had value, whether Azariel was real or not. If an elderly woman's mind created these teachings, one atheist blogger wrote, then her subconscious is wiser than most people's conscious minds. These are profound truths, regardless of their source. In my final week, unable to leave my bed, I asked Susan to bring my laptop one more time. I wrote a final post. This is Margaret Chen. By the time you read this, I will likely be gone. But the prophecies remain. 7 hidden teachings of Jesus Christ, shared by a being who witnessed them firsthand. I cannot prove Azariel was real. I can only tell you what I experienced and what he told me. Believe it or don't, accept it or reject it, but consider the message itself. Does it align with the Spirit of Christ? Does it call you to be more loving, more forgiving, more compassionate? Does it help you see Jesus more clearly? If yes, then the source doesn't matter. Truth is truth, whether spoken by an angel, an alien, or an old woman's imagination. I am not afraid to die. Azariel promised I would see everything, and it would be wonderful. I believe him, and I hope wherever I'm going I'll see my husband again. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, I'll see Jesus himself and thank him for sending a messenger to remind us what he really taught. Take care of each other. Love as he loved. And remember, the second coming is not an event in the future. It's a process in the present. Every act of love brings it closer to completion. May you all find the childlike heart that sees truth clearly. Margaret Chen, September 15th, 2024. I hit publish and closed my eyes. I died 3 days later. Susan was with me, holding my hand. She said I smiled at the end, like I was seeing something beautiful just before I went. Maybe I was. The funeral was small, just family and a few close friends. Pastor Tom didn't conduct it. I'd been officially excommunicated by that point. Instead, a young pastor from one of the breakaway churches spoke. She read from the prophecies and talked about how Margaret Chen had shaken the foundations of comfortable faith and reminded us all what Jesus really taught. The local paper ran an obituary. It mentioned my decades of church service, my love of gardening, and, with barely concealed skepticism, my final months as a controversial figure who claimed to receive hidden prophecies from an otherworldly being. But online, something else was happening. The blog posts went viral again with news of my death. "The prophet of Vermont has passed," read one headline. "Woman who spoke with angels dies, but her message lives on," said another. The book was published 2 months after I died. The Hidden Prophecies, What an Angel Told a Gardener About Jesus, became an unexpected bestseller. Christians and seekers alike bought it. Churches banned it, and study groups formed around it. Theological debates raged. Was Margaret Chen a prophet or a fraud? Was Azariel an angel, an alien, or a hallucination? Did it matter if the prophecies themselves rang true? The church split continued to widen. Traditional denominations held firm to established doctrine. Progressive churches integrated the prophecies into their teaching. Entirely new spiritual communities formed around these 7 hidden teachings. But more important than institutional change was personal transformation. Millions of people reported that the prophecies had changed them, made them more compassionate, less judgmental, more focused on love than rules, more aware of Christ's presence in everyday moments, rather than waiting for some future second coming. The 6th prophecy especially resonated. Young people, teenagers, and 20-somethings embraced it wholeheartedly. They started movements based on childlike trust and radical love. They called out hypocrisy in religious institutions. They demanded that Christianity actually look like Christ. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, but then undeniably, things began to change. Churches that embraced the prophecies saw growth, not in numbers, but in depth. in commitment to actually living like Jesus taught, in service to the poor and marginalized, in radical inclusion instead of selective judgment. 5 years after Margaret's death, Susan published a follow-up book, What Happened After: The Impact of the Hidden Prophecies. It documented the transformation that had begun with 3 mornings in a Vermont garden. She included testimonies from thousands of people whose lives had changed. Former atheists who found a Jesus they could believe in. Former fundamentalists who found freedom from fear-based religion. Young people who discovered faith could be about love and justice instead of rules and judgment. She also included something else: security camera footage from Margaret's garden. Tyler, the teenager who'd helped set up the blog, confessed that he'd installed a wildlife camera in the garden weeks before Margaret's encounter, hoping to catch footage of the deer eating her vegetables. The camera had captured all 3 mornings. The footage was grainy, the angles not perfect, but it clearly showed Margaret sitting in her garden talking to something. A tall figure that appeared and disappeared, that seemed solid but slightly translucent, that looked exactly as Margaret had described. Skeptics claimed it was doctored. Believers claimed it was proof. Scientists studied it and found no evidence of manipulation, but couldn't explain what was shown. But Susan's conclusion in the book was simple. Whether you believe my mother met an angel, an alien, or experienced something her dying mind created, the question remains: are the prophecies true? Do they align with Christ's actual teachings? Do they make you a better person? That's what matters. Not proving what happened in that garden, but living out what was shared there. The book ended with the 7th prophecy printed in full, and a challenge. The second coming is not an event to wait for. It's a reality to create. Every act of genuine love brings it closer to completion. Every moment of true forgiveness makes it more real. Every choice of peace over violence manifests it more fully. Margaret Chen believed this until her last breath. Millions now believe it too. The question is, do you? And if you do, what will you do differently tomorrow? That is the legacy of an old woman in a garden who listened when an impossible visitor spoke. That is the gift of the hidden prophecies. That is the invitation to you. Will you accept it? The book closed with a final note from Susan. On the morning of my mother's funeral, I went to her garden to pick flowers for the service. The garden she had tended so lovingly for decades. And as I knelt there among the tomato plants where she'd sat with Azariel, I felt something, a presence, warm, peaceful, vast. I looked up, and for just a moment, maybe imagination, maybe grief, maybe something more, I saw him. Tall, luminous, golden eyes filled with sadness and love. He didn't speak, he just placed his long hand over his chest in what looked like a gesture of respect or blessing. Then he faded, like morning mist in sunlight. I don't know if it was real, but I know what I felt. And I know what my mother would say. It doesn't matter if you can prove it. What matters is if it's true. And truth doesn't need proof. It only needs to be lived. So that's what I'm doing. Living the truth of these prophecies. Sharing them with anyone who will listen. Trusting that the witnesses will continue their work, whether we see them or not. My mother spent her final months as a voice crying in the wilderness. But the wilderness listened, and now it's beginning to bloom. May you bloom too. May you find the childlike heart. May you recognize the second coming happening all around you, in every act of love, every moment of grace, every choice of compassion over cruelty. The prophecies are out there now. They belong to everyone. Use them well. And if you ever find yourself in a garden at dawn and an impossible visitor appears, listen. Really listen. You never know what truth might be waiting to be shared. Susan Chen Williams, October 2029. 10 years after Margaret's death, the hidden prophecies had been translated into 43 languages. Churches around the world were still debating their authenticity. But something undeniable had happened. A generation had grown up with these teachings. A generation that saw Jesus as a teacher of radical love rather than a judge waiting to condemn. A generation that looked for the second coming in acts of compassion rather than apocalyptic events. A generation that believed angels and aliens might be the same thing, and that God's creation was vast beyond imagining. Whether Azariel was real or not, the prophecies had done their work. They had reminded humanity what Jesus actually taught. Beneath layers of institutional doctrine and cultural addition, they had shaken comfortable certainty and replaced it with humble seeking. They had turned people back toward love, and in the end, perhaps that was all that mattered. The truth had been shared. The seeds had been planted. And somewhere, in dimensions beyond human perception, the witnesses continued their eternal work, observing, recording, and occasionally, when the time was right, reminding humanity of truths they'd forgotten, just as they'd been doing since the beginning, just as they would do until the end.